the shame, the guilt, the regrets, the condemnation was so intense. And I was by myself. I was isolated at this time. I had no one around me. I had no support. I mean, it was a very, very dark, very lonely time for me. The only voice I heard was this demonic voice that told me, this world, these people would be so much better off without you. You should just take your life. You're a Christian. You have Jesus in your heart, man. You've been going to church since you were little. If you kill yourself, you're going to heaven. That was the voice that kept repeating in my head, and it was pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. And I was feeling so hopeless. I can't describe to you the depths of just
would you say it's like despair?
Despair, man. Despair. Perfect word. Darkness. And it was the deepest, darkest place that I've ever been in my entire life.
All right, let's do this.
You got a nice haircut.
Thanks.
You cut it yourself.
When you work at a barber
I work at a barber
shop.
Do you cut your hair yourself?
No, I can, but I hate it because it just takes too long.
Yeah.
And you got to sit there with all the hair on you.
With one hand. And it never comes out as good because you really need both hands to cut.
Yeah, that clipper over comb just sets it apart, you know?
Yeah.
If you can't do clipper over comb,
when you're
it's not gonna be smooth.
When you're holding a mirror and you're just doing this with one hand.
But if you're only used to using guards, not clipper over comb,
right?
I mean, it's going to be pretty easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a guy at the shop that does it every Tuesdays on hair, but it's a 2 on top and a skin fade.
Oh, that's simple.
So easy.
Yeah, that's simple.
So, what is the hardest part of being a barber?
The hardest thing about being a barber.
Hardest thing about being a barber.
Or maybe not hardest, maybe challenging, maybe most gratifying.
I think the hardest thing about being a barber is being self-employed. Mm-hmm. Because you're at the mercy of your clientele. If your clients get sick, or if your clients go on vacation, or if they move away, I mean, you don't get paid. Mm-hmm. The skill side of it, I kind of mastered like 5 years in the shop, right? I was really good at cutting hair when I went to barber college, so I didn't really struggle. I didn't know how to cut black hair. That was like foreign to me, and I picked it up after 3 haircuts. Like it just, okay, that makes sense, you know? So cutting hair wasn't the hard part. It was building a clientele. That was the hardest part.
So your barbershop's pretty well established, right? Gentleman Jack's is pretty well established. Got a good reputation. Mm-hmm. Do you guys do any type of marketing?
No,
huh? It's all got to be by like word of mouth. Then is that what it is?
So there's barbershops for sure that have like Instagram, social media, marketing, ads in the paper.
Oh, you guys don't even do social media?
We have nothing.
Really?
Yeah.
Why not have social media at least? I mean, it's free.
They never needed it. So it's crazy because we're in a part of town where there's no other barbershop within 5 miles. So literally, okay, here's perspective. I stopped cutting hair like in a barbershop full time, probably like 2018. And I was working for the MDA as an editor, Muscular Dystrophy Association. So I was an editor for them.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And then COVID hit, I got furloughed, right? I had to fall back. So I was doing other stuff. And then I get a call from the owner. He's like, hey, I don't know if you're cutting hair. No, he didn't even ask if I was cutting hair. Long story short, he was just like, hey, I need a barber. And I was like, I'm down. So I started that next week. Bro, as soon as I said I'm down, he opened up my schedule. He like created it. By the time I started 4 days later, I was booked. And I was booked the entire year. Like I would book out
Wow.
2 weeks in advance, right? I wasn't booked the entire year, but like for the rest of the year, I didn't have. This was December. I started December 10th. For that whole year, there was not one slot where I had an hour opening. Like,
So how did he create that then? I mean, did he have influence already? What was his background?
no.
Nothing?
No, he just created a shop that's really nice, really clean. I think the biggest thing that benefits that shop is the people that are working there are all people that have the same mindset. Like, there's no one there that's ghetto, that's like hood, it's wearing jerseys, and you go to the mall and you go to like Headliners and it's like you're kind of uncomfortable in there if you're not from that type of environment. Or you go to a barbershop and they're showing stuff on TV, you're like, hey, I have my kid with me.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest struggles is you go to a barbershop and inappropriate conversations between barbers.
Right.
Like, oh, what are you doing this weekend? Right. Or this and that and all that stuff. And then the music and then like TVs everywhere and they're having these music videos on YouTube and it's kind of like, whoa, like you're trying not to look at the video that's playing or you're just like, really? Like,
right.
I take Zay, that's one of the reasons I stopped going to one of the barbershops is because I would take Zay. Zay's old enough now, to recognize, the F-bombs that are thrown out there and things like that. And but even right now, even the barbershop that I go to is a little
even the
iffy,
music.
So
Even the music that they'll play, man. Sometimes it's like lyrical pornography, and that's one of the things that I struggled with, dude. Is that at the barbershops that I worked at, is the music because it just wears you down, just constantly. Yeah, if an older person,
you're listening to that all day.
Oh yeah, man. If an older person came in or a woman with a child came in, they would change it. But then as soon as they would leave, they would go right back to it. And it was just all day long, man. And me as a Christian trying to keep my heart pure, trying to keep my thoughts pure, trying to stay sober, in sobriety from alcohol and drugs, just listening to that all day long just wears you down, bro. It really does.
Yeah, I bet, man.
It wore me down. I'll speak for myself. It wore me down.
Yeah. It's also how you guys dress. You know what I'm saying? Because you guys are like, you guys dress like collared shirts or polos, jeans or slacks, right?
Well, half of the barbers are wearing like ties.
Yeah, there you go. See?
Yeah,
so
vests and
you
stuff.
go in there and it's an experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. More than anything, it's an experience. It's not just, I'm going to go cut my hair. Right? Mm-hmm. No, it's an experience. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to go with Miguel. I'm going to go with somebody, but it's going to be an experience. It's not just, I'm just going to the barbershop to cut my hair. No, Miguel knows about your family, right? Your barber knows maybe your wife, your kids, right? He or she will start to ask, hey, how was this? How was that? Mm-hmm. And, all of a sudden you're in a full-blown conversation with a guy that you see once every 2 weeks, maybe once a month.
Almost a therapy session sometimes.
Sometimes.
Too,
well, there's been times where I recently, like, my client would drop a bomb. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I have cancer.
Yeah.
I just found out I have cancer.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I'm like, oh, man.
Wow.
And I'm like, hey.
It's like, what do you say to that?
Yeah. And most of the time I'm like, hey, after this haircut, I want to pray for you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what? Yeah, let me pray for you. And dude, like, they light up, like, it's crazy because awesome. people don't. I mean, I'm sure they say some prayers, right? But it's like when someone reaches out to say, "I'm going to pray for you."
Yeah,
like, that's important.
Yeah,
they know that. They know it's important, right?
Well, so, people aren't used to that. People are not used to other people taking time out of their day to invest in them.
And, right? And it's something,
even if it's just a couple minutes or seconds.
And that's what I'm saying. It's not like it's I'm not going to say it's something so small, mm-hmm. but the gesture is small. Mm-hmm. Like it's a small gesture, right? That goes way beyond normal impact. Like it is an eternal impact, right? That you can, like, you could change this person's trajectory just by introducing them to that idea that God can heal you and change you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like
good.
So I would take them outside and pray over them, lay hands on them. I wouldn't be like, hey, are you saved? First you have to get saved. I don't even go that far. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, God, touch this person. Yeah. Show them that you're real. Show them that you're not just a dude on a painting. You know what I mean? Show them that you're a God that can move inside of them. Mm-hmm. And I've prayed over guys with cancer, 2 of them so far, and then there was a guy with a shoulder injury.
I'll let you get back to your thought, but I think another thing that I like about maybe being self-employed or working at a barbershop is that, and I'm kind of experiencing that right now where I work, is that right now there's a lot of companies that are so woke, right? A lot of professions that are all about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they have all these HR policies, and you can't do this and you can't do that. And I think in a barbershop you have more freedom, right? In the sense of like, hey, this is my chair because I'm renting it, right? And the conversation that I'm going to have with my customer is between me and them, right? Now, obviously you're not yelling and you know what I'm saying? But that allows you as a Christian to be able to witness.
Yeah.
Versus if you work in a corporate job, right? You have to be very careful because if you say the wrong thing, then it's HR. This dude's trying to push his religion down on me, or this dude's cussing, right? Or whatever the case may be. You're not walking on eggshells as much, right? Especially in a barbershop like your guys's, right? So
so there was this guy who had a shoulder injury, and he's a Christian, and he goes to a church in town, right? And he said, I've heard of people being healed, but I've never experienced healing or witnessed anyone being healed. Like they don't pray for people to be healed at his church. Like that's just not something that he's ever experienced, right?
Yeah.
And I was just like blown away because, I mean, that's a common occurrence, for us.
Should be. Yep.
I remember, healing crusades and just stepping out in faith. You hear a number of stories, right? So I tell him, he said, okay, I want to pray for you. Long story short, I pray over him and he gets healed, bro.
Wow.
He's like, he was supposed to have surgery. Mm-hmm. He gets healed right there. I was like, how does it feel? He said, wow, he's had the pain for 2 years. Mm-hmm. So this feels already better.
Wow.
And so I was like, all right, cool. Maybe it's just the adrenaline,
Start doubting your own self.
Wait, that was too quick, But a week later, I texted him. I was like, how are you feeling? He said, I'm working out again.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, shoot.
That's
and
awesome.
then he came in earlier this week, like on Monday. He took a month off from work, like some leave. Mm-hmm. And I asked him, I was like, hey, how's everything going? He's all, my shoulder's great.
Wow.
Been working out. Like, he's healed, bro.
Nice.
So, praise God.
Little things like that, like you said, you wouldn't be able to do without being in a barber shop,
Mm-hmm. I've noticed that too, that people, when they sit down, or I'll say the clients that I've had, when they sit down in my barber chair, they open up and they're more receptive, I think, to like spiritual stuff. And I think it shows too that you're emotionally invested in them and you care about their spiritual well-being as well as their physical well-being and everything else. And it shows them that you care. They're more than just a dollar sign walking into the barbershop, right?
There you go.
And sitting in your chair. Like, it shows that you actually care for them. And that goes a long way. All the people, I've invited people to church, and every single one of the people that I've invited and have gone have been clients that sat in my barber chair. Wow. Because they sat down, they opened up, and a lot of times I don't even have to say anything. I just listen, and pray for them, let them know I'm going to pray for them. Or if I offer a prayer for them right there and they accept it, then I'll pray for them right there as well. And the ones that have come to church that I've invited have been my clients from the barbershop. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, man. It's like something that it's a pretty cool dynamic that they come in and they just open up.
Yeah.
And they're more vulnerable and they're more receptive as well.
It's true, because I have one client that has cancer and he won't tell his family.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I asked,
tell you.
He told me.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just found out I have a bunch of stuff in my lungs.
Does he have like kids and wife
Yeah.
or really?
He has kids. So trip on. This is a crazy story.
My gosh.
So he has. So this is how he found out he had cancer. He was at a bar. Then he went back to the girlfriend's house. Right. Mm-hmm. Either he went back to the girlfriend's house or they left the bar. Either way, he was leaving his girlfriend, and I think she was at home. I think they went home. He was driving back home. Maybe he dropped her off, driving back home. And he I guess, I don't know how it is. Like, I don't drink, right? But I hear a number of stories where they're like, oh yeah, I went to the bar and I drive, right? I don't know how many drinks it takes to get drunk. Maybe it was one or two. I don't know. But
some people have very high tolerance.
Either way, he wasn't drunk, right? He said he was good. So he was driving home, and he gets hit by a drunk driver.
Wow. He gets hit by a drunk driver.
Wow. And the ambulance takes him. Like, it was bad. Totaled his car. Mm-hmm. Bad, right? Ambulance takes him to the hospital. He's in there. They do a bunch of checks. They find like some stuff in his lungs, X-rays. Mm-hmm. And long story short, that's how he found out he had cancer. It was from that car accident.
Wow.
And then his girlfriend comes to visit him in the hospital and breaks up with him. She's like, that's too much.
My days.
Like, that's too much for me to handle.
Wow.
So after, did he tell her that he had cancer?
Yeah.
And that's when she's just like, this is too much.
Yeah. So she broke up with him. So he's in the hospital, still recovering.
Yeah.
And she breaks up with him there. And I remember him when he walked in the shop, he was limping. He was like, all jacked up from the accident.
Wow.
And then he told me, and I was just like, what? So months go on, and I'm still cutting his hair. And then I asked him, I was like, hey, how's your son taking it? And he's like, oh, he doesn't know. And I was like, what?
Oh, man.
And he's like, yeah, I can't tell him. And I was like,
how old is his son?
I cut his hair too. He's like 14.
Oh, man. So, yeah, he's old enough to, kind of.
So the son started noticing things were wrong.
Oh, okay.
Like with dad, after the accident.
Yeah.
Like all these doctor's appointments, all this medication he's taking.
He's catching on to it.
So he's asking him and stuff. And he told him, he said, I'm sick, but I'm getting it handled. That's all he told him.
Wow.
So he still doesn't know, but he knows that something's wrong.
Oh, man.
And then I was like, hey, so does your mom know? He's like, no. It's like, bro. So as a barber, I'm the only one that can speak on this with him.
Wow.
And the only one that can be there and like show empathy and like prayer,
Yeah.
So I've been praying for him. I've been telling him, and it's just a unique opportunity that you have, when you're like, wow, like you're so willing to tell me these things. I'm not even your family.
Dude, I remember one of my clients that I invited to the church, he went to church. He's actually on the heart transplant list. And he's been in and out of the hospital, and he's not even that, he's relatively a young guy. And he and his girlfriend went to church, or to our church, on a Sunday morning, and that sermon Pastor Garrett was preaching, and he gave a testimony of his own heart issues, like medical heart issues.
Yeah.
And he gave a testimony about how he was in the hospital, and he actually, I think he flatlined, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, it's hard to stop. Yep.
And and that client that I invited to church was there that morning and heard that.
Yeah. And
when they made that altar call that morning, he stood up, man.
Wow.
He stood up, and it
Talk
really
about divine appointments.
Seriously,
that's crazy.
Absolutely, it really, really impacted him to hear Pastor Garrett's. Not only that they have the similar condition, but that the testimony of how God has healed him, and he physically sees him up there on stage preaching, looking good, strong. And and to this day, man, he's still on the heart transplant list, but he's still around. Every time I see him, I'm like, "How you doing, man?" He's like, "I'm still above ground." And every day he tells me, every day is such a blessing, man. Because like when you don't know if you're gonna wake up the next day.
Oh yeah.
because that's how bad his physical condition is. Mm-hmm. If you don't know if you're going to wake up the next day, when you do open your eyes in the morning, I mean, it's just a blessing, man. And, you know, he sees everything now in such a different perspective. But that like you said, it was a divine appointment. That morning, that Sunday morning, for sure.
Yeah.
Wow. So, Paul, I know a lot of you're new to the show. So if you don't know, Paul's our switcher. He's gonna be running and operating the switcher. I want the audience to kind of get a chance to hear your story, man, because you have I would consider it a unique story.
My dad was a pastor.
No way.
Yeah, man.
Wow.
He was a Baptist, Southern Baptist pastor.
Interesting.
He was from Cuba. My mom's from Mexico. And my mom's father, my grandpa on my mom's side, he was a pastor. Mm-hmm. And I have an uncle, I have cousins on my mom's side that are pastors. So that's kind of like I don't know, man. It kind of runs in the family. And, you know, so yeah, I was born and raised in church.
It'll take some time to turn on.
Oh, okay.
If you want to just lay it down.
Yeah.
The thing is, there it goes.
There it is. Okay, cool. I'll leave it. I'll leave it.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you got some heritage. You definitely have some heritage there. Okay.
Yeah.
So you grew up in church.
I mean, I'll be transparent because I mean, my testimony is my testimony. What am I going to do? You know, lie about it? Mm-hmm. I can't. You know,
I mean, you can if you want to.
I guess I could. But
that's what I do.
It would be much. If I were to lie about it, it'd be much
Sunday.
More interesting. Yeah. But no, man, I mean, I grew up in like a very legalistic, very conservative, very rigid religious household. And, you know, everything was no. It's a diablo. You know, parties.
It's like El Bobby Diablo. Boucher.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Exactly. Yeah, it's the devil.
That foosball's the devil.
It is. The foosball.
Because them girls are the devil.
Yeah. Vicky Valancourt. So did you have a Vicky Valancourt in your life?
Oh, man.
It's like I have multiple.
Yeah. Yeah, man. No, it's like everything was just, you know, the devil. And
the devil.
Movies, couldn't go to movies. Everything was like, I couldn't. So to me, Christianity was just a big list of things I couldn't do. I couldn't have a girlfriend if they weren't Christian. And there was no girls in church, so that was that. I couldn't go to movies. I couldn't go to parties. I couldn't have friends that weren't Christian. I mean, it was just basically a bit. I couldn't dance. I couldn't go to school functions if there was going to be dances or parties, things like that.
Wow.
I mean, it was just a big list of things that I could not do. But what I was required to do was be at church every single time. I was at church growing up as a kid. I was in church Sunday morning, Sunday night. Tuesday night was men's meeting. You know, I was a 6-7-year-old kid in a men's meeting. You know, the only one there, just sitting there. Couldn't make noise, but just sit there. Wednesday night, you know, service. Thursday night at someone's house. Friday night, we were off. We'd watch Urkel on Friday, so that was the treat of the week. Saturday night prayer meeting, and then Sunday start all over, man. And it was and that was it. And so, you know, you guys talked about you mentioned Pastor Scribner?
Josh Scribner.
Josh
Scribner from the Lighthouse Church in Santa Monica.
Yeah, and you know, when they had that Sunday night panel, when they were on stage and they were kind of doing a Q&A with them, right?
Yeah.
He said something that like really resonated with me. He said, you know, if you're gonna I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but it was something to the effect of like, if you're gonna enforce, or if you're not gonna allow something for your kids to do something, then you better have an explanation ready as to why. Right? Do you guys remember that when you said that?
You got to have a reason on why you're giving them,
and explain it to them.
Yeah, I didn't watch it, to be honest.
Yeah,
so, but I heard it was good.
Why didn't you watch it?
Because I was tired that night, and Yeah.
It was good. It was good. I mean, that really resonated with me. I mean, I don't have kids. And so that was probably like.
So would you say that your parents didn't really give you the reasons why, they just enforced them?
It was very much like a dictatorship. You know what I mean? Like, we do it because I said we're going to do it, and if I don't do it, then I'm the devil. You know, and because
that's legalism.
Because as I got older, I started questioning why, and it was because I said so. And
you're not allowed to ask a question or to refute or to
challenge
or be like, well, where does it say that in the Bible, right? Well, Bible doesn't matter. I'm the Bible type of thing, right? You have to trust what I say type of thing. So
yeah, man. Well, and not only that, but it was started to instill in me too was the if I didn't do these things, if I didn't go to church, then
you're gonna go to hell.
I'm gonna go to hell. God's gonna punish me, and I'm gonna go to hell. And so that was the reason why. So, you know, when Pastor Scribner said that, have an explanation, that resonated with me because I didn't have an explanation. You know, because when you get older as a kid, and you're able to start making your own decisions, that explanation that was told to you it's in there, right? It's in your head. And then you can start kind of connecting it. Okay, so that's why they told me that. That's why they told me that. And you start connecting things, and then you can start making your own decisions. But like, for example, you know, because I told you so, it's not an explanation. So when you get to a certain point, there's really nothing that you can connect to it other than I told you so. But if you're going to rebel, then that doesn't really hold weight, right? Like if you're already in a rebellious state of mind because I told you so, that just fuels the fire that you had, that rebellious fire that you have, right? So it's not going to help you to make, I'll speak for myself. It didn't help me to make healthy, right decisions.
So when was the time in your life where you said, I am done with this Christianity. I'm done with following my parents' rules. I'm going to do whatever the heck I want to do?
Oh, man. So, you know, going back to like explanation. So, you know, if you're not given an explanation, you're not given like kind of like a logic in a loving way. Oh, dude, like the, you know, if you're not, for me, I wasn't given an explanation as to why by my parents. And I don't mean to I don't want to demonize my parents or my father in any way either, because my father was a good man.
Yeah, parents do what they think is best for the child, you know. Yeah. And trust me, I'd rather would have, you know, grown up in a legalistic home than my dad coming home and beating the crud out of my mom or seeing my mom shoot up heroin, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah,
so,
as
much as my mom has made mistakes, right? Mm-hmm. I don't hold him to it, right? Because I know, like, she wasn't serving God at that time, right? Or she didn't have the right discipleship to make those decisions, right? So it's like, I get it, you know?
Yeah, they do the best.
But this, as much as it is who they are, this is your story. You know what I mean? This is like something that you personally went through.
Right.
So I get you 100%, you know, like we don't look at your parents as if they're evil, but this is your experience. This is what you went through. So yeah, man.
And you know, I've heard stories of people that grew up in horrible homes, you know, and I'm like, wow, it breaks my heart, you know, that a child would be raised like that. And I thank God that I wasn't. However, you know, the devil's out to steal, kill, and destroy, man, mm-hmm. and he'll get in any way that he can, even in very subtle ways. Because I mean, abuse doesn't have to be like extreme, right? Physical, sexual. It doesn't have to be extreme. It could be very subtle. It could be emotional and it could be mental.
That's right. Yep.
And either one of those ways, I mean, the devil just has a field. Yeah, man, the devil has a field day. And dude, a lot of things that were told to you, you know, that story or not a story, but you know that, I don't know, little line that goes, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Yeah. Whoever said that didn't know what they're talking about, dude. Because I personally, I'm 45 now. I know 60, 70-year-olds that still struggle with words that were spoken to them as child. It still hurts. It's still a wound, man. So, you know,
I think that especially the subject of religion, you can manipulate so many people with it, right? Especially if people are just used to the because I told you so.
Right.
Right. And when you grow up in a household or in a church that the reason that you do it is because I told you so, right? You are more susceptible to that mental and should, dare I say, verbal abuse. Because yes, they might not be belittling you and calling you stupid and bad words, but they're saying if you don't follow this rule, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the fear that enters your life is not the fear of the Lord, which is reverence. It's fear of going to hell. And you see God as this judge and as this taskmaster. And he's just looking at you and he's waiting for you to break a rule. And if you break this rule, then, you know what I'm saying? And that's completely opposite of who and what God is.
Yeah.
Right. So you can grow up. There's a lady in my church that she grew up and she was manipulated by religion.
Yeah.
Right. She was manipulated, and because of that, she was violated, not just emotionally and mentally, but even physically. Right. All in the name of religion. Right. So you see how the tactic is always the same. From the beginning, it's twisting God's words.
Yeah.
Right? That's what the serpent did to Eve in the garden. Twisted God's word, planted doubt in her. Right? Did God really say that? Right? Is that what he really meant?
Yeah, there's no evil without twisting the good.
Yep. Exactly.
Right? So,
yeah, man, religious abuse is a thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's a thing, man, for sure. And verbal abuse is a thing, and emotional abuse is a thing. I mean, it all creates trauma, right? Especially if you're a kid, it all creates trauma that if you are not given the tools to handle it, to process it, to get over it in a healthy way, to learn from it, and all you do is internalize it, then it just builds up, man. It builds up inside of you, and you start creating your own coping mechanisms.
So is that what eventually happened to you? Like it started building up inside of you. You started building your own coping mechanisms.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I started developing this resentment towards my father because my father was, aside from the religiosity, was very verbal, very emotionally abusive, and very shaming. He was always real shaming. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so self-confidence, identity. These are things that I think should probably be instilled in a healthy way to a child. And, sometimes it doesn't happen. And so I started developing, a lot of resentment towards my dad, like an aggressive hatred towards my dad, and by association to God.
Okay.
Because if God, my dad represented God, so I just assumed that God was the same way. Very, very condemning, very shaming on me, very just looking, waiting for me to mess up to just drop the hammer.
Yep.
And so, yeah, man, so a lot of, it just started building up in me, building up. And going back to what you said about the Garden of Eden, what was the serpent's message to Eve? Was that God was unfair, right? That he was withholding things from them,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
And that he was really keeping the best thing, keeping them from being better, right? Yeah. Which is what you just said. He twisted God's word to create that, to deliver that message. And the same thing. And dude, his tactic hasn't changed. It's the same old. Correct. It's the same old strategy that he used back then that he uses now, that he used on me. And that's what he started to do, is getting into my head as to like, God is unfair. God is withholding good things from you. God is keeping you from being better. And, I started looking at my classmates, and I started seeing they don't have to go to church all the time. They don't have, they're not they're not Christians, and look at how this was the deception.
Yeah.
Look at how happy they are.
Yeah.
Look at how good they are. Look, they can play sports. I couldn't play sports.
Yeah.
Look, because they interfered with church.
Yeah.
They can stay home on a Sunday night and watch Superman if it came out on TV.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
And so like all these things started being presented to me as like, this is God's fault that I don't have this.
That you're not having fun, that you're not happy, that
Yeah.
you don't have their supposed joy, right? That you could kind of see outwardly.
Yeah.
So, of course, he's going to take advantage of that. Started coping, right? Started building that. So, what did that manifest into physically?
So
yeah.
I was about the age of 19, and actually it started when I got into high school. When I got into high school, like this whole world just opened up to me. This whole world of like beautiful girls and partying and drinking, and I was so introverted, and I just wanted to come out of my shell, man. I wanted to be a part of the crowd, the scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was probably 15 when I started drinking, smoking weed. Pornography was my first addiction.
Okay.
I don't know when exactly, but I was very, very young. And pornography back then wasn't as easily acceptable as it is now. I mean, accessible as it is now. So, yeah, man, I don't know. I mean, I was very young, dude, and pornography, like I said, was my first addiction. I was so young, dude. I remember, you guys remember back in the day in TV, like whenever they would show someone naked, like on a TV show, they would just show them from here up.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But you knew that they were naked from whatever was going on in the scene. You knew they were naked.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being little, dude, and walking up to the TV screen and trying to look down the TV screen, man.
Oh, wow.
To whenever
Yeah.
they would have like a naked girl on the screen, right?
Yeah.
And I was little. I was very little, but I remember that vividly. And I remember, there would be in newspaper ads, they would have bras and bra models, and I remember cutting those out and hiding them, strategically under my bed, where my mom immediately found them, right? And I got busted. Yeah, and that like, it adds fuel to the flame.
Yeah, and as a kid, you're not seeing everything, but that right there is more than
more than enough.
Yeah, more than enough
for your imagination.
As a kid, that's essentially the same thing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
like, oh shoot.
Yeah. Imagine now, dude. Imagine how tough it is now with how accessible that is, dude.
You don't even. I mean, you don't even have to go as far as how accessible it is. How immediate it's right in front of your face.
Right.
In everything is sexualized.
Yes.
Everything, right?
Yes.
From car parts to cars to every commercial. Even think about the
Carl's Jr.
Yeah, Carl's Jr. Right, or think about like these commercials of like medications, right? They come out and then a homosexual couple comes out, hugging and kissing or whatever, and it's just kind of like, what does a cure for eczema have to do with a homosexual couple?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Things like that. Everything is just so in your face. Even like cartoons.
I was just trying to normalize.
Yeah. Even cartoons. It's like Bluey and Miss Rachel and all that. During the month of June, they came out. Right, and they're just like, oh, we support love and we support this and we support that, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like it's not just accessible, very accessible right now. It's you don't even need to try. It's like right there.
And they're targeting the kids.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They're specifically,
Yep.
it's strategically targeting kids, dude. I mean, it's demonic, absolutely. And it's really, it's nothing new, man. Even talking about the devil's strategies. How many times in the Bible do we read? I mean, with Moses, the Pharaoh tried to kill all the boys from ages 2 and under, right? Mm-hmm. When Jesus was born, the same thing. So there's always been a demonic attack on kids.
There's nothing new under the sun.
That's right.
Yeah, man.
Yep.
So yeah, dude. So that was the first. That was my first addiction. But then, the funny thing is, or not the funny thing is, but what I discovered later on, a lot later on, when I started my recovery journey, is that I was an alcoholic way before I even took my first drink. Like, I was already an alcoholic, and I discovered this later on when I started my recovery program.
Explain that,
man. You start like I said, trauma, when it's not dealt with in a healthy manner, then a child will internalize that, and then just it builds and builds, and all you're looking for is an escape. All you're looking for is something to relieve the pain, the anger, the fear.
So would you say that you weren't necessarily an alcoholic prior for you taking your first drink? Would you say you were already an addict before taking your first drink?
I could say that, yeah, because I was looking for anything. So pornography took me away from that. And when it came to alcohol, I've never, since the time I took my first drink, I've never been a social drinker. It was always for blackout. Always. Why? Well, I discovered in my recovery journey that, I'm just trying to numb, man. Trying to numb, you know what I mean? There's so much pain in there that all I wanted to do was numb, was to forget, was to maybe dissociate, be someone else. I discovered that when I introduced substances to my body, that I can be outgoing, I could be funny, I could be extroverted, I could be the life of the party, man.
Yeah.
And then that's when that's when I started making friends. And that was around 15. But I remember vividly when I was about 19, I was having an argument with my dad. Normal thing. I was always the one, going against the current, questioning and arguing. And I was having this argument with him. And I remember that I grabbed the Bible right in front of his face and I slammed it into the trash can as hard as I could. And I remember he didn't say anything. He didn't tell me a word. He went and he took it out of the trash can, and I just remember the look on his face. It was down, right? Kind of wiped it off and walked out of the room, man. Didn't say anything to me. But that was a turning point for me in my life, because that was the moment when I dethroned God from my heart, and I took the throne. And I made a vow to myself that I would never deny my flesh anything that it wanted.
Wow.
That was at about 19, man. And that was a few decade long downward spiral that just got so dark into, I was a cocaine addict. I was an alcoholic. I ruined all my relationships, all my meaningful relationships with my family. I've been fired from jobs, because of my alcoholism, because, the definition of an alcoholic is someone who, once they consume alcohol, cannot control
their appetite, their cravings, their wanting, right? They can't stop.
They can't stop.
Yeah.
Because what happens is it triggers an allergic, what they call it, an allergic reaction, and it becomes this phenomenon of craving where all sense of responsibility, all commitment, anything, obligation goes out the window, and all you care about is that next drink, getting more. And only by the grace and the mercy of God, man, am I still alive, because I should be dead from drug overdose. I should be dead from alcohol poisoning. I should be dead from suicide attempts. I should be dead from...
You try to take your life?
Yeah.
Like through blackout, or...
I tried ODing. I've cut my wrists.
ODing, like drugs?
Drugs, taking up...
You've cut your wrists?
I've cut my wrists.
What type of drugs?
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. I cut my wrist.
You went down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How many times?
Shoot.
Wow.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's crazy.
The shame, the guilt, the regrets, the condemnation was so intense. And I was by myself. I was isolated at this time. I had no one around me. I had no support. I mean, it was a very, very dark very lonely time for me. The only voice I heard was this demonic voice that told me, this world, these people would be so much better off without you. You should just take your life. You're a Christian. You have Jesus in your heart, man. You've been going to church since you were little. If you kill yourself, you're going to heaven. That was the voice that kept repeating in my head, and it was pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. And I was feeling so hopeless. I can't describe to you the depths of just
would you say it's like despair?
Despair, man. Despair. Perfect word. Darkness. And it was the deepest, darkest place that I've ever been in my entire life. And that voice just kept telling me, so many people, this world would be so better off without you in it. You would be better off if you did this. Because you do this, you're going to heaven. You don't have to worry about this anymore, man. You know, you tried.
So what'd you do?
This was another thing that kept saying, you tried and you failed.
Oh.
There's no point. There's no point into trying anymore. You've tried, you failed. So, of course, I had been drinking and I had been doing cocaine and I had been doing this for days and days. And I took a razor and I cut my wrists. That was sometime in the morning time. I don't know. I really don't know. I remember the sun being up. It wasn't nighttime. It was during the day at some point. And I remember my mom coming out and finding me just sitting in the chair in a pool. You know, and there was a pool of blood on the floor, on the ground. And she called the ambulance.
Do you want to show on the camera? No?
What do you think?
It's up to you.
Nah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll cut that out. No worries.
Okay. And so the ambulance comes by and you know, next thing I know, I'm spending, I don't know, a week or two in the psych ward. And the thing is that that wasn't the one and only time that happened. You know, like there was another time, you know, where the same thing. You know, I took a bunch of pills. Again, my mom found me. You know, if it hadn't been for my mom, I wouldn't have made it. I woke up in the hospital and, you know, had all these punctures in my stomach because they hit me with Narcan, right? They just started dosing me with Narcan so that I can come out of it.
What kind of pills were you taking?
It was some kind of opiate. I was on some painkiller because I had gotten into a fight. And my rib was fractured or cracked or something, and I was in a lot of pain. So they gave me these pain meds, and I mean that's the only thing I had at that time, you know. So I took it, and of course, again, alcohol was involved, drugs were involved, and but the biggest influence was this demonic influence that I just felt it. I was surrounded by it, and the voice was relentless. It was relentless and repeating, and it would get louder and louder and louder. You know, that's one thing that I've discovered is the difference between demonic voice and the Holy Spirit's voice. Is that the demonic voice will be screaming right up in your ear, telling you to do it, do it, do it, do it. And the Holy Spirit, just with the whisper, would be like, don't do it, man. You know, and I've learned to differentiate the voices through you know, my experience, because what the devil's trying to do, or he was trying to do to me, was just push me to suicide, push me to end it all. And he was using that deception, that lie, that if I did it, I was going to wake up in heaven. I was going to be in a better place. Everyone here on earth would be in a much better place because I wasn't here. Everyone would be happy. But, you know, the Bible says, Jesus said that the devil's the father of lies. He can't do anything but lie. That's all he produces is lies. So I wonder, where would I have woken up, really? I don't wonder, really. I know. I wouldn't have been to heaven. I don't think I would have gone to heaven. I would have woken up in hell, dead in my sin. And those lies of the devil was just a quick trip to get me there. But by the grace and the mercy of God, man, that's the only reason why I'm still here, because of God's grace and his mercy for me. This was already...
That's crazy.
This was already after I had destroyed a marriage. I was married before.
You were married?
Yeah.
I thought you knew him.
No, so I knew him in barber school, yeah. And then
he said, "I know you."
But that was like what?
Wow.
Well, in barber school when I met you, I was about to get married.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so now you're filling in the gap where I didn't know what happened, you know. So
yeah, so all this happened after all that.
Okay.
So my marriage lasted about 3 years, and it ended in divorce because of my actions, because of my addictions and my actions. I was unfaithful in the marriage. I was just a very self-centered, selfish, self-deceived person. And you know, Eddie Gutierrez brought a sermon the other night when it was the AO takeover. That's what they call it.
Yeah, about deception.
About deception, man. And it was that really resonated with me too, man, because oh man, you know, if you're trying to deceive me, I can step back and be like, whoa. I don't like this. You're trying to deceive me. But if I'm trying to deceive myself, it gets tricky because I want to deceive. I want to be deceived by myself. You know what I mean? So it's a very, very interesting thing, man, where yeah, dude, by the grace of God, you know, you come out of it only by revelation. So in my recovery process or my recovery journey, it's like I had all layers and layers and layers of blindfold on, right?
Yeah,
blindfold of self-deception.
Yep.
And God, one at a time, or however much he knew I can handle at the time, would just remove one, right? And then I'd see things clearly for what they are. And I'd realize, this is me. I caused this. This whole time I was blaming other people. I was thinking it was their fault and you know, everyone else was doing me wrong. And when God started removing the bandages from my eyes, man, it's like, oh, dude, it's me.
So when did that happen? When would you say is the first? Because I remember once we had Paul Gualtieri here, remember? And he said long before he accepted Jesus as his Lord and Savior, he shared a story of what had happened in a phone booth, that he found a chick track. Right. Remember that? Yeah. But from that point where he found the chick track to the point where he actually surrendered his life, I think about 10 years passed, or five or 10 years, something like that. So where would you say is that point where God started to deal with you that you can recall, and how did that transpire?
Man, it's been such a long journey for me, dude. But, you know, I would say it's been probably 8 years when I went into my first rehab center for drugs and alcohol. And that I started to, that I think the process started, you know, and like I said, I was so deceived. I was so self-deceived. I was so blinded. I was so just consumed with myself that I couldn't see things clearly. And I think, and my mind, my thought process was so distorted, so twisted from that I allowed the enemy to do in my mind. You know what I mean? So it's been, I believe that when I came back to the Lord and I repented for my sins, I repented for backsliding. I repented for my rebellion. I repented for everything that I did. I believe that he forgave me in that instant, right?
This is when you went to the Salvation Army? You started the rehab there?
Yes.
That's the first time? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
And I believe that he forgave me in that instant. I believe it. But the process to renew my mind has taken a while.
Oh, yeah.
And it's taken a while, man. And it's almost like that's when the real battle began, because God was pulling me and the devil was like, no, you ain't going nowhere, you're staying with me, and my mind was still so distorted that it's taken a while. It's been a process, man, but by the grace and the mercy of God, I'm here.
Amen, bro. That's awesome.
Yeah. So how long have you been sober now?
Well, it's been, it hasn't, I haven't, I wish I could say that I've been sober for a longer period of time, but I have had my relapses in recent history. Mm-hmm. I have had my relapses. And the thing is that every time after I relapse, even after coming to our church, is, I learned something from it. And the first thing that I feel is immediate, intense shame, guilt. I don't want to go back to church, man. I'm embarrassed. But I recognize now that that's another tactic from the devil, right? To keep me separated, keep me from where I know.
Yeah.
Keep me from where I know. God brought me here. God brought me here to the Door Church. I know He brought me here for a reason. And the mere fact that the devil's trying to keep me from going tells me something, right?
Right.
So then I'll go back, man. And, I've gotten to the point now where I can recognize that. So I'll go despite this intense shame, guilt, condemnation that I feel. I'll go. And even while I'm there, I'll just get so much guilt, so much shame, attacks. But, I recognize that that's where I need to be. And, so that's what I've been doing, man. It's like, just keep moving forward. Keep moving forward.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Wow.
It's awesome because you grew up in a legalistic household, right? Parents that were trying. They were trying.
Yeah.
To bring you up in the things of God. And, whether it's religion, whether it's fear that my child's going to grow up and turn from God, so I better make it impossible for him to, he could have been doing it out of 100% love, right?
For sure.
But obviously what happened.
Yeah.
And what's amazing is you went down this whole rabbit hole of issues and sin and destruction, self-harm. And at the end of the day, you still got saved, bro. Yeah. The grace of God and the mercies of God were still there to say, yeah, despite your parents' imperfections, that seed was still planted.
Yes.
Where you understood who to turn to and when you needed to turn to Christ.
Yeah, man. And, I see myself like I see myself a lot in, the nation of Israel, right? Like even in the book of Judges, I call the book of Judges the book of relapse, because that's what it seems like. You know what I mean? They're in that cycle.
That's good.
Where because I relate to it so much.
Yeah.
It sounds so familiar when I read it. I'm like, this is familiar.
Yeah. It's a picture of my life.
Yeah, dude, they're good.
Coming and going.
God is blessing them, and then they start to slip away. They start to rebel. They start doing the things that the pagan people around them are doing.
Right.
They get caught up in all of that. Next thing you know, they're enslaved to it.
Yeah.
They're enslaved to it, and that's what sin does. It enslaves you. That's what addiction does. It enslaves you. You cry out to God, and God is faithful. God is there. Boom, He helps you. And then what happens? You're good for a while again. And then that cycle, you know what I mean? I see that cycle in the Bible. I see that cycle in my life. And going back to like what you were saying about the parents, man, I mean, parents do the best that they know how, right? They can't give you something that they don't have or they don't know how to give. And what I recognize in my own family and my own parents is that they had their own traumas, right? They had their own traumas. And so they did the best they could. I don't blame them at all. The last conversation that I had with my father, I was already backslidden. I hadn't been in the church for years at this point. He was on his deathbed, literally deathbed. And it was just him it was just him and I in the hospital room. And he had an oxygen mask on. And he told me, he took his mask off and he told me in Spanish, Yo te quiero ver a ti en el cielo. I want to see you in heaven. He knew I was backslid. And he knew that if I didn't get my life right, that he wasn't going to see me. But he told me, I want to see you in heaven. In other words, get yourself right together. Yeah, man.
You know what I find most kind of astonishing is that you got to know God for yourself.
Yes.
That's what it was, because God was introduced to you by your parents in a certain way, certain facet, right? One angle, I guess you could say. I always tell my church, God has multiple angles to him. You know, you'll experience each angle as you go through life. Some angles you may not experience because there's no trauma, right? God reveals himself in different ways through different seasons of life. Yeah. Right? So, but you got to know God for yourself.
Yes.
And you got to know that he's not a God that judges or that only judges, right? That is only looking for you to mess up. No, you actually experience the grace of God.
Yeah.
The forgiveness, right? The fact that God is a loving God, that he is a forgiving God, that he's not there just waiting for you to mess up. He's waiting for you with arms wide open, just like he was with the prodigal son, right? Absolutely. He's waiting for you. He's waiting to put the best robe on you, to put a ring around your finger, right? Sandals, right? All that. That's the God that you serve now, right? It's the same God that your parents were, kind of portraying and kind of introducing you to.
Yes.
Right? But that's only one side, I guess you could say, right, of God. The fact that, God judges sin, right? He's just, but he's also love. He's grace. He's merciful, right? Yeah. So there's no variation to God, right? So I think that's the most kind of like beautiful thing about your testimony. Yeah. Is that you were able to come out of that rubble. Yes. Right? And experience God for who he is.
And part of that was having to renew my thinking or my perception of God. I had to like you said, establish my own relationship, not my father's, not my family's, my own faith, my own relationship with God. And a lot of that I had to change my perspective of God. Because yes, he is judge. He is but he's loving. He's compassionate, and I see it in my life. Just the mere fact that I'm still here alive when I shouldn't be. Yep. And so I had to relearn of who God is. Yeah. And I get to compare life with God and life without God for me. Yeah. And dude, I would never trade life with God for life without God again. Yep. It was so dark. Yes. So just
empty.
Hopeless.
Oh yeah.
And empty and dark, man. And there is no way that I would ever go back to that, man. No way that I would ever go back to that.
No. Well, I'm going to say it's a miracle, man, to see you here, saved.
Yes.
Alive, and it's just a testament to anyone who's going through like mental health issues, as far as like suicidal thoughts, addictions, substance abuse. I mean, I have 3 siblings that are on the streets, bro. Like heroin addiction. Fentanyl addiction. I mean, you name it, right? I haven't seen my brother in 10 years. And it's like you got out, bro.
Yeah.
And you got out and you're still fighting, and I just want to say I'm proud of you.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah. I didn't know. I wish I would. I mean, like the Holy Spirit grabbed me in barber school and was like, "Hey, you need to preach to this guy right now with everything you have." You know what I mean?
But we did. We got along.
Yeah, we got along.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I feel like we got along the most out of
absolutely
all the crazy guys that were there.
Because at that time, I was somewhat trying to come back. I was still carnal as heck, but I was trying to come back to the things of God. And you were there, and we kind of connected with God.
So I want to say I'm proud of you, man. And the fact that you're willing to share this story, it's going to help so many people realize the shame that I feel when I mess up is a lie.
Absolutely.
And that they can change, they can overcome, right? But I want to clarify, it's not through your strength, and it's not through whoever's listening, your own strength. It's through Jesus Christ.
Yep.
That's how you're going to overcome. Yes. That's the only factor that is in your circumstance. That's the only thing that has pulled you out.
Yes.
You know, you could have, I mean, I'm sure you've gone to multiple rehabs, multiple classes, but the only thing that has actually pulled you out of that life is the salvation and the blood of Jesus.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Amen.
Right. Yep.
And I wanted to say too that every time I would come back to church, our church, you know, with as much shame and as much guilt and embarrassment and condemnation that I felt, the brothers have always been so welcoming, man, and non-judgmental, and just embracing me, happy to see me, happy that I'm there, you know. And it's like, you know, okay, let's go, let's keep moving forward, you know. They, you know, and I can't express like how the support of the brothers there at our church has made such a difference, man.
Yep.
Such a difference, especially at a time where, you know, a lot of my family, a lot of the friends that I had, they all had to distance themselves from me. And I understand, I get it, because of the way I was.
Yeah.
And so, but when you have a support, when you have a support, especially if they're godly around you, man, it's almost like that. It's like the paralytic man that his friends carried him to the roof, right, and lowered him down to the roof so that Jesus can heal him. You know, what would that paralytic man do if his buddies weren't around? If he didn't have that support, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we're paralyzed emotionally, mentally, spiritually. We're stuck. We don't know. But when the brothers rally around you and carry you, man, yeah, dude, that makes a difference. But by the grace and mercy of God, you know, restoration is starting in my family. My brother, my sister-in-law,
that's awesome,
who didn't speak to me for a long time, and
they just invited you over to a birthday party, right?
My niece had her first, her 1-year-old birthday party, man, and I was invited, and I was not expecting that at all. That came out of the blue, dude. And guess what? First thing that hit me, boom, shame. Boom, guilt.
Yeah, of course.
Boom, condemnation. Because what are people going to think when I get there? The people that are the other family members, you know what I mean? What are they going to say?
Guy,
dude.
Yeah.
And that the devil is trying to keep me from that, trying to keep me from the restoration that God is doing in my life.
Yep.
And I said, no, I recognize this as an attack. I recognize this as a demonic strategy. So I'm going, man.
Yeah, you walk in there and you're a living testimony now.
I prayed. Yeah, I called my
testimony.
I called my brother Roman Moreno. I called him. I told him, bro, I need you to pray for me. I told him the situation. He prayed for me. I prayed before I went into the party, and I'll tell you, man, I had a blast. I decided to stop focusing because a lot of it is mindset too. You know what I mean? Like what you focus on. And I was focusing more, I think, on me being the center of attention versus my niece, who was the birthday girl. Of course, it's about her. So I was like, I gotta change my whole perspective here. So, man, I had such a blast. I was in the jumping castle showing the kids how to do flips. I mean, it was such a great time that I got to connect with my niece, with my nephew, with even other family members that I was afraid to see there because of what they were going to say, what they were going to think about me. Man, you know, it was just such a great time all around, dude. And yeah, man, praise God.
Cool. Awesome. That's good, man.
Well, thanks for joining us. Another episode with Paul Sobrino. Catch you later.
Peace.